Fun fact, a Quebecois trucking company was ordered to rehire a truck driver who was fired after she drank 9 beers while driving and crashed on a highway in Pennsylvania. The labor arbitrator said the company had wrongfully fired the employee since she suffered from a disability: alcoholism. The trucker was transporting a load from Montreal to Pennsylvania and stopped twice during the drive to buy 6 packs of beer. She drank 9 beers while she was driving and eventually lost control of the truck and crashed, resulting in damage to the truck but causing no injuries. When she was arrested, her blood alcohol level was 0.18, twice the legal limit. The trucker told the company about her drinking problem 1 week after the crash, and she was fired when she tried to return to work after completing a 2-month rehab program. The labor arbitrator told the company they could have installed a breathalyzer in her truck to allow her to return to work, or they could have found other work for her. But the trucking company said she had violated the agreement between the company and the truckers union that clearly stated the penalty for drinking and driving was being fired. Regardless, the trucking company lost the case and was told to rehire the trucker, but they plan to appeal the decision. Fun fact, when telephones were invented, you couldn't dial a phone number. You'd lift the receiver, which would then connect you to a human telephone operator, then you'd tell the operator who you wanted to talk to, and they'd manually connect your call using a cord and a telephone switchboard. Almond Stroger was one of 2 undertakers in Kansas City in the late 19th century, but for whatever reason his business started dipping and he was getting less customers. Almond then found out the wife of the other undertaker in town had gotten a job as a telephone operator, and every time someone would call the operator and ask for Almond's undertaking business, she would instead connect the call to her husband's undertaking business. Almond complained to the telephone company, but they did nothing to help him, so he took matters into his own hands. He went to work and invented the automatic telephone exchange and the rotary dial in 1889, which allowed people to dial phone numbers and connect calls from their own home. It took a while to catch on, but in the end, Almond's invention eliminated the need for human telephone operators and made the entire process automatic. Fun fact, hitting a fastball in a Major League Baseball game is one of the hardest things to do in sport. A 100-mile-per-hour fastball takes around 400 milliseconds to travel from the pitcher's hand to the plate. For reference, it takes the human eye 300 to 400 milliseconds to blink. This leaves the hitter with about 150 milliseconds to make the decision of whether or not to swing at the pitch. Let's break that down. After the pitch is thrown, it takes the hitter's brain 75 to 100 milliseconds to identify the ball in the air and process its trajectory, and the fastest swings in baseball take around 100 to 150 milliseconds to execute. This leaves the hitter with approximately 150 milliseconds to decide whether or not to swing at the pitch. Fun fact, humans have created a new type of rock. It's not actually rock though. It's called plastiglomerate, and what it is a mixture of melted plastic fused with natural materials such as rock, sand, seashells, or coral, forming a rock-plastic hybrid. Geologists believe plastiglomerate stones will last for a very long time and will become a permanent marker in Earth's geological records of our time polluting the planet. Plastiglomerate was first identified on Hawaii's Camilo Beach in 2006. At first, scientists believed it was a result of lava flowing over plastic pollution, but after further observation, they discovered it was actually caused by people throwing plastic waste into campfires, and then when the plastic cooled, plastiglomerate stones were formed. These plastiglomerate stones are then carried into the ocean or buried on the beach, where they will be added into the Earth's rock layers, marking our time on the planet. Further research is required, but scientists believe plastiglomerate stones exist across the Earth, and they also believe as more extreme weather events occur, more plastic will melt naturally from the heat of the sun and fuse with rock, forming even more plastiglomerate stones. Fun fact, after the devastating February earthquakes in Turkey, as rescuers were shifting through the rubble of a collapsed building, they heard the sound of a baby crying. Following the sound of the child's cries, rescuers pulled a month-and-a-half-year-old baby from the rubble of the collapsed building. Incredibly, the child had survived alone under the rubble for 128 hours, and it was believed the child's mother had died when the building collapsed. The baby was placed in the care of Turkey's Ministry of Family and Social Services, where she was given the name of Gizem, meaning mystery in Turkish, by the workers caring for her. A woman who was being treated in a nearby hospital for the injuries she had sustained during the earthquakes had been asking authorities if they had found her baby in the rubble she had been pulled from. Healthcare workers began conducting DNA testing on all the babies who had been saved to see if they could find the woman's missing child, and they found a match. It was Gizem. 54 days after they had been separated by the earthquakes, Gizem, whose real name was Vetin, was reunited with her mother in a hospital in Adana. Fun fact, some good Samaritans spotted a bright orange exotic bird on Britain's A41 highway that was struggling to fly and looked like it was in some serious trouble. They stopped their car and captured the bird and called the Tiggywinkles Wildlife Hospital in Haydenham and told them they were bringing the bird in for medical attention. But when the good Samaritans handed the bird over to the veterinarians said, "That's not an exotic bird, that's a seagull covered in curry powder." Obviously, no one knew how the seagull had become drenched in curry powder, but the orange substance had coated its feathers and was preventing it from flying properly. The wildlife hospital first named the bird Vinny, after Vindaloo curry, then they scrubbed it clean to remove all the curry powder, then they ensured the bird was healthy, which it was, and after a few days of observation, they released it back into the wild. Fun fact, when roads were first paved, there were no lines on the roads. It was pretty much just a free-for-all, and everyone would drive wherever they wanted to on the road and just try not to crash into each other. Then in 1911, Edward Hines, who was the chairman of the Wayne County Road Commission, was driving behind a leaky milk truck, and as the milk truck drove in front of him, it left a white line along the concrete road. Edward Hines had a eureka moment, where he decided to begin painting a center line on paved roads to separate traffic and designate traveling sides of the road. The first road in the world to have a center line painted on it was River Road, now called West Jefferson Road, in Trenton, Michigan. In 1917, the U.S.'s first highway center line was painted on what is now County Road 492 between Marquette and Negaunee. The rest of the world quickly adopted this idea, and in 1920, both the UK and Australia began painting center lines on their roads. This simple idea is widely recognized as one of the most important traffic safety inventions in the history of highway transportation. Fun fact, in 2004, a woman tried to buy $1,672 worth of groceries from a Walmart with a fake $1 million bill. Alice Pike got to the cash register at the Covington Walmart and initially tried to pay with 2 gift cards, but they only had $2.32 worth of value on them. Alice then reached into her purse, handed the cashier $1 million bill and asked, "All I've got is this. Can you make change for $1 million?" The cashier obviously noticed the bill was fake and contacted the police. Alice was arrested and the police found 2 more $1 million bills in her purse. Alice said she had gotten the bills from her estranged husband, who was a coin collector, and Alice was charged with forgery, and speaking from jail, she said, "I wasn't trying to pass off a fake bill. That's ridiculous. You just can't keep up with the US Treasury." Fun fact, in 2016, a 70-year-old man robbed a bank because he said he'd rather be in jail than have to spend any more time at home with his wife. He was then sentenced to 6 months of house arrest. In Kansas City, Lawrence Ripple had an argument with his wife of 33 years over a broken dryer, eventually saying he'd rather be in jail than have to spend any more time at home with her. So in front of his wife, he wrote out a note that said, "I have a gun, give me money." He then drove to the Brotherhood Bank and Trust, which is only steps away from the Kansas City Police headquarters, and presented the note to the teller. The teller gathered $3,000 and handed it over to Lawrence, who then walked into the bank's lobby and sat down in a chair. When the police arrived, Lawrence told them he was the man they were looking for. After being arrested, the judge sentenced Lawrence to 6 months of house arrest, 3 years of probation, and 50 hours of community service. Fun fact, there are over 2,500 brass stars on Hollywood's Walk of Fame, but only one of them is hung on a wall, Muhammad Ali's. Walk of Fame stars are generally awarded to people who made significant contributions to the entertainment, film, or music industries in Hollywood, but an exception was made for Muhammad Ali after the Walk of Fame committee decided that boxing could be considered a form of live performance, plus Muhammad Ali had 2 Grammy-nominated spoken word albums, so the committee considered him more of an entertainer than just a boxer. But when Muhammad Ali was presented with the honor of having a star bearing his name placed on the Walk of Fame, he told the committee his star could not be placed on the ground for 2 reasons. He didn't want people who had no respect for him to walk on his name, but more importantly, he bears the name of the Prophet Muhammad, and therefore it was impossible for him to allow people to trample over his name. So the committee made another exception and placed Muhammad Ali's star on the wall outside of the Dolby Theatre. Fun fact, the reason we don't use the letter E in the academic grading system is because when it was originally released, the letter E confused parents, as they thought it meant excellent rather than what it actually meant, which was failing. Teachers first started using the A, B, C, D, E grading system on student report cards in 1897, with A meaning perfect grades and E meaning failing, and it began at the Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts, and within 20 years, the system was adopted in almost every school across North America. The reason the system was adopted so quickly was because as more people immigrated to the US, and as mandatory school attendance laws were introduced, teachers needed a quick and simple way to communicate student performance to parents, and the letter grading system was pretty easy and intuitive for parents to understand, except the letter E. E meant failing, but most parents would interpret it as excellent, and therefore didn't realize their child was struggling with a subject. By 1930, schools had done away with the letter E and replaced it with F, as F was easily recognizable as a failing grade.